Good afternoon. My name is Scott McMahon, and on behalf of the Maternal and Child Health Bureau, I want to welcome you to our webcast entitled Using Visual Apps to Connect with Your Target Audience on Social Networks. This webcast is designed to help you not only tell, but show your audience your message through the visual power of video, graphics, photos, and other images. Our presenters will help you get started using applications such as Instagram, Pinterest, Vine, Filmic Pro, and Path so that you can better get your health messages out to the public. We will also share with you some best practices, tips, and tricks to engage your target audience on social media. Before I introduce our presenters, I want to take care of some housekeeping items. We encourage you to ask questions, to submit questions. To do so, click on the Question tab, type in your question, and click Submit. Even though we will address questions at the end of the presentations, you can submit questions at any time during the webcast. We will do our best to address all of the questions. However, if we do not get to your question during the webcast, we will make a point of emailing you directly with an answer. Also, before leaving the webcast, please take our survey by clicking on the survey button, Take Survey button. This will help us improve future webcasts. And also, finally, this presentation will be archived at www.learning.mchb.hrsa.gov in approximately 2 weeks. We will show you that URL at the end of the presentations, and you will be notified by email when the archive, including downloadable slides, is available. I am joined here today by Tamika Farrington. Tamika is a principal of Spotlight Communications and founder of Social Media U, a program that teaches organizations how to use social media platforms. She is also a contributing blogger for Social Media Today, an online magazine for the world's best thinkers on social media. Tamika is additionally an Impact team member for the work that we do with MCHB. Welcome, Tamika.
Thanks, Scott.
And also John Richards. John is a research instructor at Georgetown University and lead on several federal and state-funded MCH projects with the Health Information Group. He has been recognized by HRSA with the Young Leadership in MCH Award for integrating technology, including social media, into public health programs. We have taken over his conference room additionally today, so I want to thank John for having us here and welcome to the webcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So today's agenda is that we're first going to talk about social media marketing, showing versus telling. Then emerging social media platforms and promising practices. And then how to get started, getting started. And then finally, we will take your questions. So with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Tamika.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you guys for having us back this year. This is a really fun presentation to give because I think last year we were really speaking about emerging social media platforms to choose your target audience. But this year now we're talking more about visual apps to try to connect with your target audience on social media. One of the things that's happening today is that a picture really is worth 1,000 words. And I think about 2 years ago that maxim was content is king, and that was correct. But now, as more people engage with social media on their smartphones, they're discovering that taking a picture on the go is easy, simple, fun. You can use a high-resolution phone, which is much less tedious than typing out a status update on a 2-inch keyboard. So you can, and we can all be photographers and designers to some extent. And one of the fun facts that I think people should know is that about 44% of respondents for a recent HubSpot survey said that they're more likely to engage with brands if they post pictures than any other media. So you want to make sure anytime you make some type of social post that you try to follow it up with some sort of visual just to make it a little bit more impactful. Here's an image of a baby on the left, a cute baby you'll see, and on the right it says SIDS is a leading cause of death for babies 1 to 12 months old. So when you have things such as images or informational graphics or infographics as they're known, videos, checklists, tutorials, or slideshows, you want to try to add some content. Captions and descriptions are great. Keywords and hashtags to help organize that across the social site work well as well. And then watermarks or website URLs to lead them back is always a great thing to do. So wherever possible, you want to use visuals to share your message. It's important to show it, but you also want to create the text as well because it's more impactful. It's more efficient and instantaneous for viewers to see that visual and the text with it. And it's also easier to make a deeper connection.
And taking this a step further, here we have another image of a baby sleeping in a crib with more text around it. And this is a very good way. This is the new Safe to Sleep campaign by NACHD. And this vision actually shows the baby but has the Spanish language right around the child. So you get the vision of the child in a proper position. You never want to have an image that's wrong because even in the text, if you say this is wrong, somebody might look at the picture and that picture goes right into their head and they say, oh, this is fine. So this, what you see here, and there's a link at the bottom, it has text appropriate that's not too much around the picture, so they sort of present a unified model for sleeping. And if you go to NICHD, they have this in multiple languages, so this is a way to use images to get different audience members.
Okay, great. Before we get into the actual visual social media platforms, I just want to give you kind of an idea of who's looking at these platforms, who are some of the users, and how many people this is impacting, because this is an important target audience to connect with, and it's important to know how many people are actually tuning in. On Facebook, there's about 665 million daily users. Twitter, about 400 million daily tweets are sent. On Pinterest, there's 48.7 million users, so that one's slowly gaining some traction. Instagram has about 7.3 million users. Vine, which is one of the apps that we'll talk about a little bit later, it's still too early to tell, so those numbers are not in yet. Google Plus surpassed Twitter last year with about 500 million registered users. Path has about 10 million users. SlideShare, 50 million users. And YouTube has about 1 billion users, 4 billion views daily. So there's a lot of people watching those cat videos, right? And then Flickr, 87 million users, 3.5 million images are uploaded daily. So that's a lot of audience, and that's why we think it's important for you guys to be using some of these platforms to connect.
And to give you an idea here, just the number of Facebook users, if you added up the number of users who log on to Facebook every day, they would equal the third largest country in the world behind China and India. So we're talking huge numbers of people who are active users of this platform.
Right. So that's a good segue, John, into Facebook. Facebook is a very visual platform in itself. You can use it visually. Here in this example, you'll see to star and pin content on your brand page that you want to expand or highlight on, maybe a program, an initiative, or a campaign that you're working on. As you'll see in the next example, you can showcase a cover photo that represents your brand. And that's going to be something that we'll talk a lot about today. It's nice to put out photos and visuals, but also when you bring people back to your own Facebook page or your own brand, make sure that your image is correct, it's well done, and that it's making a connection with users as well. And I just want to point out that photos and images on Facebook generate about 50% more likes than the average post. Page posts that include a photo album generate twice as much engagement than any other post types. So that's a lot of engagement, and you want to make sure that you're taking full advantage of it.
If we take a look at this next slide, what we have here is the HRSA Facebook page. And this is a very good example to show you how built-in imaging really makes life easy for you. You'll see on the left, every time that you click, you add a link. In this case, it's a link to a PDF. The Facebook program automatically pulls in a picture from that image. So if you're linked to a website, you'll see that you get a thumbnail, sometimes options, many thumbnails to choose from, or in this case, to the front page of a PDF. And this is a really simple way, even if you don't have a smartphone with you, if you want to add some visual interest. HRSA is very good at doing this. Every time a publication comes along, putting and in this case it's an oral health publication, just putting that image there really makes a big difference. It's very easy, and you will notice you get a lot more users.
Great. And there's that same idea. Now we're on Twitter. You can use Twitter visually to incorporate twit pics into your tweets, as you see here on the left-hand side. And then again, that idea of bringing increased brand awareness by customizing your Twitter page background. So here we are again at the HRSA Twitter page, and you'll see that they have twit pics on the left-hand side, but what's really prominent is their branding on the right-hand side. There's an image of their logo, there's an explanation of their tagline, and there's all the pertinent information and even a URL in case you want to get in touch with them and connect that way. So I think, if you want the best visual ROI on Twitter is the customizable elements on your Twitter page, and that's going to help make your Twitter presence more visually driven. You always want to make sure that it's visually driven.
And here is an example of another easy way to do this. This is actually a brand new, you're the first people to actually ever see this. It's still in draft format, but this is an aggregator of public health departments' Twitter accounts. So we have from all 50 states and actually many of the territories, their public health departments' Twitter accounts that are aggregated on this page in the library, and the URL is there. And you can take a look and see, so in this portal, it's sort of a running tab of what's going on in the states. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen here, it's just, I think somebody literally took a cell phone picture of a publication. I think this is out of Hawaii. They just got back from the press, and how engaging it is. Mm-hmm. This is exciting because it gives you sort of a preview of what it might be. And of course, the link is right there. By aggregating these two, just sort of a shameless plug for this type of page, you get to see sort of the trending topics, what is happening in MCH in the States. And if it's visual, you're going to go there first.
Right, exactly. It's a great example. Thanks, John.
Yay, Hawaii.
Okay. So with Pinterest, I'm sure a lot of your programs and organizations are using Pinterest. It's great and it's fun. You can organize and share all the beautiful things you find on the web. That's their claim to fame. And you can use Pinterest to tell a visual story of your organization's history. Here you see baby facts, baby and child health. It looks like there's some kind of ebook or brochure about child health and essential drug management. And you can also use it to pin a mix of marketing-related content, data visualizations, infographics, and things like ebook covers. So you want to also make sure when you are using Pinterest that you include links of your pins to lead people back to your product or landing page of some sort, so that all of that Pinterest traffic is valuable to you and can turn into leads or other visibility on your website. These are another fun fact. Pinterest is the 4th largest traffic driver worldwide. Here's again a list of 7 ways to leverage the potential of Pinterest for healthcare social media. First, you want to pin images that represent your brand. Second, you can use it to create infographics, things like healthcare images related to exercise, nutrition, or other healthcare promotion resources work really well. Also, you can add a pin it button on your website, which is, again, important in driving people to that social media platform. You can optimize boards for Pinterest and to increase SEO, or what's known as search engine optimization. Another way to say that is just increase your presence, get more people to come to you, and add hashtags when you make your pins, and also it can help you build your following.
And I know what most of you are thinking. Oh, Pinterest, I like it and it's pretty, but really, come on, how can I use this in public health? And you would be amazed. I did just a little bit of fact seeking before our presentation, and I found huge numbers of public health campaign bulletin boards that you can pin to. And just out of curiosity, I said, well, let's see what they have for immunizations. And I was kind of amazed. You'll see here on the screen, it shows you a scattering of public health immunization campaigns from the 1920s to the present. We start, with early on, all the way through the 70s when I was growing up to today. So if you're looking for images, public health images, MCH images, don't discount Pinterest. And also, as you're creating them, this is the perfect place because people do find them. So if you put it up here, people will find your information.
Right. So before we got started, I think I was showing Scott an Instagram photo of my dog. But Instagram can be used for a lot of different purposes, especially in public health. It's a fun and quirky way to share your life with friends through a series of pictures, and it just adds different filters and generates a lot of engagement. So here on the left, you see a bullying awareness campaign. This is a very powerful message in itself. Stop bullying. They've applied a filter to the image there. And then on the right-hand side, you can see an autism awareness picture. Again, very visual, great color, great imagery, and it's also very powerful because it's obviously a photo that a child has made. So Instagram has actually passed Twitter for daily active mobile users. There's about 7.3 million daily mobile users on Instagram, while there's about 6.8 million on Twitter. So it's fast growing. And you can actually use them together because tweets are comprised entirely of text. What you want to do is make sure that you're linking back to those Instagram photos. One of the things I really like about Instagram is that it has 10 times as much engagement as any other social network. So that's a lot of power. You can use it visually to announce program news or events. Here on the left, there's a zombie campaign telling kids not to fake weed plus you equals zombie. On the right-hand side, there's an actual program picture, so you can see the end users here, the kids in the photo, which is another great way to use it. You can share behind-the-scenes views of your organization, even use it to do things like host a photo competition. And I also want to mention some more stats about Instagram. There's about 80 million registered users, 575 likes per second, and 81 comments per second. So it's a lot of comments, a lot of likes, and a lot of engagement on Instagram.
And while there are a lot of cats and dogs on Instagram, you might think, the internet is made out of cats. Instagram also is perfect for public health. In this case, the image that you see now on your screen is actually a website for Jamie Oliver's Food Revolution. Jamie Oliver, if you don't know, is the British cook who has made eating healthy sort of his focal point. And he started an Instagram feed for Food Revolution. And it was showing pictures of healthy food that people make. He would start showing pictures of healthy food. He would get other users, Instagram users, to post their pictures of their healthy food. And it sort of was a positive reinforcement. People got support for showing that. He commented on it. There was a lot of interaction because remember, social media is about being social. We're not always just pushing. It should start a conversation, especially talking about nutrition and food choices. People need that kind of interaction. And on this screen, you can actually see, his whole website and everything he does is sort of a visual public health information extravaganza, as I said. Cool. Because he shows right here on the map all the places where people are currently posting. He has ways to share information down at the bottom, pictures, videos, text comments. We're realizing that this is a platform that will affect change, actually, in public health. So if you haven't gone there, please go and take away a recipe or two.
Okay, and I wanted to introduce Path today, which is another image sharing app. It's much newer. It's kind of the baby of our group of applications today, and it's got about 10 million viewers. It's a social networking-enabled photo sharing and messaging service for mobile devices, and allows users to share with their closest friends and family. I went to actually join this the other day and was looking for, it'll invite you to ask your friends on Twitter and other networks, and I have to say probably less than 2% of my friends, family, and colleagues were on Path, so that just goes to show you how new it really is and emerging. But it's a neat application. It can help you with private one-on-one group messaging. You can actually add words and voice to that messaging. It lets you do things like saying things, again, showing versus telling, using stickers to show emotions versus writing out a long status update. And then it gives you the opportunity to cross-post. So you can also post on Path, but then you can post your Path photos via Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Foursquare. And one of the things that I've heard and read on the reviews is that it's more organized than Facebook. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But remember that this is a smaller network, and the idea is to keep it to your close friends and family and acquaintance. So it limits each user's social network to about 150 friends to encourage users to select only high-quality connections. Maybe used better for a one-time campaign or something of that sort.
One of the things that Path actually shows us, too, is the importance of being aware of emerging technologies. Facebook is really the king right now and is really reaching core target audiences for public health. However, what we do find with PATH is that the core audience is much, much younger. So we're talking about the rising tweens and teens, where Facebook are your 20-somethings. We're learning that Twitter is actually late 30s, pushing into 40s. So as these audiences gain age and start using or needing public health information, it's good to have your finger in all of these applications. Even though you're not currently posting to it, you should at least be aware of it, or at least tune into our webinars so we can tell you about them. Thanks, Tamika.
That's a really great point. Again, another emerging application is Vine. This is considered the best way to see and share life in motion. It's currently only available on the iOS operating system for iPhone, but hopefully that will change. And Vine is an application that lets you create a 6-second video that you can share with audience using Twitter, Facebook, and via your website or blog. It's micro content has been an emerging trend over the past 5 years, and we're seeing more and more of these, 140 characters or 6 seconds, or do things in a certain amount of time. And I think if used correctly, this 6-second video app can be highly effective for promoting and enhancing your organization's social media presence. And I think it also encourages people to have to think out of the box and be more creative with their campaigns. It also allows users to do things like use time lapse, show the personality of their organization or brand, and then obviously showcasing new content. It's a great way to announce something. This is an example here of another HHS Vine, and it breaks down a myth. So there's a myth, right? People cannot recover from a mental illness, but then there's the fact. People can, in fact, and do recover. And then they're leaving you with a takeaway hashtag #HealthyVine so that you can find more information and resources around this type of Health Vine or HHS fact. So it's great for things like this. And what you can do, actually on this screen, we have a video for you. And if you want to access these links, you can click on the downloads button across the top, and just find the link, click on it, and here you'll be able to actually see this Vine video in motion, which is kind of neat. And you can do things with Vine visually to display your latest technology, highlight your organization's champions, market upcoming events and important health days or months, or even like this one, offer health tips or factual information.
And I know you're probably thinking, actually, Vine, 6 seconds, really? What can we show in 6 seconds? And we're not saying that this is the be-all, end-all solution. However, it is one more way to put a personal face on your public health department or your grant or your target audiences. And on this slide, you can actually see on the left there are tips on how to use Vine in a public health way, and there's a link there. And on the right, actually, because I've made some Vine videos myself, and they're all silly. But in looking at a lot of hospitals are starting to use Vine, and this actually is serious, and it's a way to show the patient and what they're going through. And it's a long link here on the right, but if you click on it, there's some funny things. This top example is a young man who's been diagnosed with 7 types of cancer in the last 6 years. And he made a 6-second video explaining what chemotherapy is to him. And it's funny, and it's sad, and it's real. And in 6 seconds, you get the whole sense of what he must be going through. So there are really, really cool, innovative, thoughtful ways to use this app. And we're only scratching the surface here. So please try it out.
Okay. We're going to move on now to Google+. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. As I mentioned in the beginning, it's surpassed Twitter with 500 million registered users last year. And one of the reasons that's true is because Google's the second largest search engine. So being on Google+ and even having a presence helps with your search engine optimization, or getting found, as they say. One of the great things that you can do visually Here you see a photo of a Google Plus Hangout. There's a woman speaking, and whoever is talking at that moment will come to the forefront. So that's something you can do visually on the platform. But it also recently launched, Google Plus launched their Google Plus Communities feature. It's where you can browse loads of information related to healthcare quality, social interaction, and engage with healthcare professionals who understand your curiosity and concern. So that's really neat. And then the Google Plus Communities allows pages and profiles to initiate discussions around specific topics to foster community, share resources, and discuss industry-specific issues and more. You can use Google Plus visually to showcase a cover photo that best represents your brand. Again, that idea of bringing people back to your brand and leaving them with a sense of who you are and a way to get more information. We mentioned increasing your search engine optimization or helping your brand or organization get found. And then obviously things like highlighting upcoming Google Hangouts relevant to your industry. So there's a lot you can do with Google Plus, and there's actually a new feature stream, and it's something called related hashtags, where Google analyzes content that appears in your stream and then determines what it's about and gives it an appropriate hashtag. So that's really neat. There's just so much being done now with Google Plus. I think they're just scratching the surface still, and you'll see more to come from that one.
And yes, Google Plus actually is emerging, and you might ask yourself, well, why do I need Google Plus? We're already on Facebook. Isn't it the same thing? And again, it's putting information where your audience is, and we know that more and more people are logging on to Google Plus, and they're doing a lot of cool features. There's going to be a lot coming out about information sharing, whether it's face-to-face or document sharing, collaborative suites. Google Plus will be sort of a place to aggregate this. And on this slide that you see, you actually see in the background, the American Public Health Association has an amazing Google Plus profile. And it's amazing the kind of information you can get there. So that's a really good example to go to. Also, CDC is putting together, this is a shameless plug, for their really amazing webinar series that complements what we do. And they have actually now it's an archive of a webinar called In the Know. And this is actually on using Google Plus and YouTube for public health. So I invite all of you to click on this link at the bottom right. And I think with all of these platforms, especially with Google Plus, we now are thinking of them as secondary to our websites and to our emails. And this is slowly changing. Now we design for the web first to get information out. We send information out through email first, and then think about other ways. But looking at the upcoming group of the MCH workforce, what we're going to find is that it's about developing for the mobile first. So we're going to be putting more effort into developing for Google Plus, for Facebook, and then thinking about, there are still some people who access us through our websites or find out about projects through email. So it's going to be a slow and gradual process, but Google Plus is actually one to look for in that process.
This is another platform that I'm sure most of you are familiar with called SlideShare, where you literally present yourself and your work. SlideShare is a Web 2.0 based slide hosting service, and you can do things like upload your presentations, your PDF, open office presentations to showcase what you're doing. It's the world's largest community for sharing presentations, and it's really neat in that it can help you with increased search engine visibility. It can also help you with lead generation, sending people to your SlideShare site so that they can get more content. Also, it can help with social network growth when you're sharing more presentations and help you get found more easily. It's a new channel for content promotion, and it also offers higher quality blog content. And then, of course, visually, it helps to demonstrate your expertise through visual presentations. You can encourage people to register to view your upcoming presentations, and again, increasing your SEO and lead generation. And one of the things that I really like about this personally is that a lot of people will ask me if I do a talk on a certain subject, and I can send them to our SlideShare site where they can log in and see everything and find kind of what's related to them that they may want me to target or speak more about. So it's a really great service and very visual, again, in itself.
And it's funny, when you put this into the presentation, I thought I knew SlideShare because we actually use it with the National Maternal and Child Oral Health Research Center. There's a series of online distance learning projects that we do. And often what we'll do is we'll put a slideshow up about how to use the website, how to log in, because people have difficulties with it. So I knew we put our information up there, and I have to say I put it up and then never looked at it again. So when I was talking to some of the colleagues here, they actually showed me the site, and if you look on the right-hand side of this screen capture, in addition to that slideshow, there are related slideshows, and I was amazed at, by putting our information up on this public site, first of all, I was able to access a lot of MCH oral health information on fluoride and early childhood caries, but also everybody who might be looking at a different slideshow then conversely got to see the material that we had put up. So this was kind of a way to sort of go viral on a small scale, but to reach the audiences that we know are out there but might not get to information through our websites.
Right. It's a great example. And most of us, I'm sure, are familiar with YouTube. Like I said in the beginning of the talk, there's 1 billion users on YouTube and about 4 billion daily views. So it's definitely powerful and the second largest search engine out there. With YouTube, you can do a lot of things visually. Obviously, create educational how-to content, create case studies if you're program or organizations just to show your work in more depth. You can help to personalize your program, maybe put some patient testimonials up there or interviews to show who you really are and what you're about. It gives you an opportunity to get away from that kind of produced video, more to go in depth of really the personal side of the work that you do, and that's what I enjoy about it. And I wanted to mention that in terms of health videos that are watched, we find that consumers enjoy watching educational videos. They prefer health-related videos to be less than 5 minutes. And John and I were just having this conversation, and he was saying that for every 30 seconds, you probably use another half of your audience. So shorter is definitely better. If you want to keep it around 2 to 4 minutes, that seems like a best place or best practices to stay within. And consumers report that online health videos serve as a top resource. So keep that in mind, and obviously YouTube is only getting bigger and the audience is growing.
And I know one of the issues that a lot of people, especially in public health departments, have is the very real fact that YouTube had historically been blocked by many people. And this is actually changing as we're learning the public health benefits of it. We're seeing that more and more health departments are opening it up, more and more states are opening up their firewalls to allow this. So here I'm talking about other video aggregators too. And there's actually YouTube for nonprofits that you can sign up, and it removes the ads and all of the pieces on the right that might not be appropriate. And this is definitely something in putting your information out that you want to look into. Let's see. I think the next slide is talks about Wild Apricot is a wonderful online resource that gives public health examples for YouTube. And then I wanted to just draw everyone's attention to Vimeo, which is very similar to YouTube. They don't have quite the space limitations. You can put longer videos if you have a long training that you want to put up. This is also a very good way of doing it. It has it's second to YouTube in audience, but it's very good. And then on the next slide are my awesome video examples. And these are really good examples on how to use video, especially YouTube, to affect change with public health. And the first one is what is called The Fifth Guy. And this is a series of short 5-minute clips. And actually, you can view one of these. I think actually they're shorter than that. They're like 1.5 minute clip. You can also view this from looking at the downloads button on the video interface. There's also the URL here. And this is about washing your hands in the public restroom. And it's funny, but it gets across a very important example. Of course, the It Gets Better project might be the largest example on YouTube of what we might not at first consider a public health campaign. This is the project about bullying LGBT students. And it started very small. They thought they were going to get 300 videos. At last count, I think there's almost 100,000 videos of people sharing their stories. And one simple message to kids who might be contemplating suicide or might be drinking too much is that it gets better. Look at me. This is my example. And if you believe me, you can make it through. And it is actually very strong, and it's important to tell the story. So that's a success story for YouTube. Oh, this is me too. I forgot about this. This is showing that even text-based campaigns do benefit from video. And in MCH, I'm sure you are all familiar with Text for Baby right now. And it actually is brilliant in its simplicity about sending messages to women who are pregnant corresponding to the time in their pregnancy that they need this information. However, they realize that also that storytelling is so important. So if you look on this page here at the bottom here, there's a link to it. You actually get to hear and see mothers and their stories about how Text for Baby actually impacted their decisions while they were pregnant. So another success story for MCH. Oh gosh, again, more stuff. Flickr. Let's move out of video for a second into the standing image, because some people still are intimidated by video. A single image can be very important. Here, if you go to AIDS.gov, their Flickr account, they have done an amazing job. On the left-hand side, you see information graphics that they've put together, which are big public health posters with some text and some images. And on the right, you actually see people with HIV saying, I'm here, I am happy, I have a life. So again, it brings the message home.
Great. Thanks for those examples, Tom.
Oh my
Those were
gosh.
great. And now that we've inundated you with all these tools, you're probably asking yourself, how do I get started, right? And that's a great question, and one that is very common. So we put together this little guide of 4 tools to help you get started with visuals, audio, and video. The first is the infographic. Information graphics or infographics are just graphic visual representations of information, data, or knowledge that's intended to present complex information very quickly. So you see this woman here. We're talking about U.S. maternal health care crisis. And it's interesting. It's visual. You've got an image of a woman who's clearly carrying a child. The numbers stand out. The colors are bright and vibrant. So you're controlling the flow of information and bringing the user's eyes really to where you want them to go. And that's what's so great about infographics. Second, presentations are ideal for getting started. We talked a little bit about SlideShare, ideal for sharing open files, collecting ideas, and connecting with new partners. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about word clouds for those of you who may not be familiar. A word cloud is simply a visual representation also of text, data, typically used to depict keyword metadata or websites or to visualize text. They're usually single words, and the importance of each tag is shown within the font size or color. Again, using elements to make your graphics stand out or the text come alive. And then obviously video, as we talked about, YouTube is king, video is king. Video content is consistently the most engaging content and also opens up opportunities for expansion into new platforms, including YouTube. I didn't mention this earlier, but I think that users are 12 times more likely to click on video when you have it and you're sharing it with a post. So that's important to know. And then we'll go in, we've gotten some questions about Section 508 and 508 compliance, and we'll go into detail a little bit later about that. The first tool that we use to create the infographic here is Piktochart. This is a great tool. We use it in my office all the time. It's an easy infographic tool. It requires little design knowledge. There's about 100 templates that you can choose, and it's one-stop shopping for building, designing, and customizing visually attractive infographics. So this is a great one. And I think one of the things that's so great about it is it allows the user flexibility and control over what information will be viewed online. So the idea is, why sit and read passively when you can actively interact with information? And that's what Piktochart aims to do. And you can do it, on the left-hand column here at Public Health by the Numbers. This is obviously the top of the infographic, but this infographic is flowing down, whereas the one on the right, tobacco use is responsible, and childhood immunizations, that one is going horizontally. So there's so many things that you can do to attract attention and keep interest. Visually is another type of infographic tool. It's one-stop shopping for creation of data visualizations and infographics. And it's structured as both a showcase for infographics as well as a marketplace and community for publishers, designers, and researchers. A little bit different than Piktochart. But one of the really cool tools that Visually has is called the Twitter Visualizer, which allows users to input the Twitter handles of two different people, and then it generates the infographic comparing their hobbies, followers, and the occupation of two accounts. So it actually brings the information together for you.
And what these companies, these products do, is they make you look really good. In public health, I remember we used to create publications, and they looked very public health driven. You know, with clip art and Word, you don't have a lot of abilities. If you look on this slide, these are, if you go to this website, there are 15 examples of public health campaigns. And they're all beautiful, and they're all easily made. So in a couple of hours, and with the right data and the right background, you can actually come up with something that kind of looks like you have a huge print shop behind you. So it's a very good tool in times of dwindling budgets. We all know how that feels.
We all know how that feels. And again, presentations, another great way to get started. So we talked a little bit about SlideShare, an online slide hosting service. Very easy to walk you through, set up your different slides and to showcase your portfolio. Some of the additional benefits of SlideShare include increased search engine visibility. So again, helping you to get found. There's lead generation embedding in the product. It can help you to grow your social network. And it's, again, a new content for just promotion. Like John said, it's great to figure out where your audience is and meet them there. And then it can even help you with things like producing higher quality blog content and leading people back to your slides from your blog.
And a very good platform for presentations in the academic world, but has a lot of public health impact, is a VoiceThread. And this is a website where you can upload your presentations, very much like SlideShare. However, in this case, you can actually comment on them. So you'll see here, this is part of a public health campaign about food and eating, something we all like. And it invites people to either type in text, to tweet answers, there's actually a phone number that you can call, and it records your voice in response to what is on the slide. So it's a really good way of sharing some information and then seeing what people in the field are doing.
Right. This next tool is called Taggle, which is an online word cloud generator. And it's a great one. It's a web service that allows you to create gorgeous tag clouds or visually stunning graphics out of a lot of very boring, what can be boring text. And Taggle clouds have numerous advantages against ordinary text. Like you can customize the colors, custom fonts, cloud shapes can even change, etc. And it's more for entertaining your visitors and providing a better user experience for things like posting a visual alongside a website or a social media profile. But again, even just taking a look at that data on the left, it's so lengthy. It's obviously dummy text, but then when it kind of comes alive in that Taggle screen on the right when you put it in. You can even choose the words here that you want to highlight and those that are kind of secondary in the cloud. So there's a lot that you can do to show the hierarchy of information even with the word cloud.
And here are two examples of how we've used word clouds here at Georgetown. And both of these cases were where we needed an image, but we didn't have a photograph of somebody. And in this case, it was to explain health disparities. So literally, I think we used Wordle.net, which is similar. Mm-hmm. But literally, you type the URL, in this case, of the page that you want them to pull the words from, and it pulls the keywords. The more times you use a word on a page, it customizes the word cloud based on that. So you get to see here are sort of like two real-life examples. And the nice thing is you can then save this, copy and paste it, put it on your website, put it on your flyers, and go from there. It's very fun.
Great.
Videos with, we talked a little bit about the importance of videos, but people are scared of it, and I am too. But I have my smartphone. I love my smartphone. I have it with me everywhere. More and more you're seeing tips and tricks and programs on how to increase the capabilities of your smartphone to use them for videos. And they're not perfect, but a lot of times, it's getting that personal face, getting a little story, putting it up there. And if you actually go, well, here are some links here, but these were all just pulled from YouTube on how to make more professional videos with your smartphone. The most important thing to remember is lighting is important and sound. So in addition to your cell phone, always have a good light source, and if you can, get a little mic and start having fun.
Right.
Oh, and then I guess on the next slide, we actually see this is an app that is becoming very popular. It's called Filmic Pro, and it just gives you a lot more options in creating. If you don't have really good lighting, it enhances it. Again, we're not talking, this is not going to win you any Academy Awards, but if you have a small video that you need on a website, this will get you there, and I think this is very expensive for an app at $4.99. So I think the most public health departments can get this.
Right.
If we start talking about Section 508, and we've got a lot of questions, and this is something that sometimes we like to forget about, but as MCH workforce, we have to be concerned about making our information accessible. And the nice thing about text with Twitter, with Facebook, text is very accessible. You can access it. If you have a screen reader, you can access it. Video is tough. Audio is tough. Here are, on this page, these are from howto.gov examples of or instructions on how to make your social media apps accessible. And if you go to this website, you can take a look. And a lot of it is either for audio, providing a transcript. This is not anything new to us. We know anytime we've had an audio, we have to provide a transcript. If you don't have it on your social media app, if you put an audio up, link back to the transcript on your health department website. For video, of course, closed caption would be perfect. We don't all have the budget for closed captions. But again, if you can link back to the transcript of what is being said or a description of what is being said, you know, the whole point of Section 508 is to make things easier to use. And always, if all else fails with these, always let your audience know, members know, if they're accessing something on social media and they can't get it, to email you. And that one, again, we're talking social media, but the social media might be a telephone call instead. That's a really good way of ensuring Section 508 compliance. And on the next slide, we actually see people are doing some really cool things. EasyChirp is a much more accessible platform for Twitter, so this might be something you want to look at. And again, always go to a .gov. Here's disability.gov. They have guidelines and also a lot of tips on how to make your social media apps compliant.
Okay.
It's a new world.
Okay, so we've come to our Q&A, and we have a lot of questions that have come in.
That's good.
Nearly, I think we have got about 40 so far. So
wow.
I'm going to start with whoever got their question in first and work up the list and see if we can't address all these. And as I had mentioned before, if we don't get to your question during this webcast, if we run out of time, we will certainly make a point of sending you a response by email. I think, John, you talked about this, but the question is why does HRSA recommend a Facebook-like application instead of the further-reaching Facebook?
Well, I'm not sure. I think the recommendations are always, and these are broad, to access many different platforms. Facebook, actually, we do know for a public health audience, especially for young women, young families, this is a really good place to reach people. But knowing that you have to explore other places, like we said, Path is trending more young. Twitter, who knew, is trending older. So it's sort of important if we're reaching different audiences to be aware of the ways that different audiences access information.
Okay. Someone writes, I work in Montana where Facebook seems like the main social media source, and other social media sources are often used by a younger crowd sporadically, and you talked about some of the different demographics. The question is, do you agree that social media sources are used differently throughout the country? and that focusing on a couple social media sources such as Facebook and Twitter may be enough for more rural areas. Any information on kind of geographically?
Actually, there's a lot of data, and I just happen to have it with me. Let's see if I can find it. There was an amazing study done, and I can't find it, that shows what platforms are being used. But all in all, this is a wonderful reference. Shameless plug. The Librarian's Nitty-Gritty Guide to Social Media. And I speak not only on behalf of the MCH Library, but if librarians have figured out how to do this, they are really good to listen to. And what I gathered from this, I actually read this on a plane flight recently, is that if you're going to start anywhere, start with Facebook, especially for public health, especially for any reach to the public. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Then hit Twitter. Then, if you have time, expand out. But really, Facebook first, Twitter second, and then other places. You should also look into technologies that aggregates, like Hootsuite for Twitter, where you can post once and it sends your same message to different outlets, to your Facebook, to your Twitter, to your Path account, to YouTube if you have video to it. Those things are really good. You can schedule tweets that way. You can spend an hour on a Monday and schedule out for the whole rest of the week. So there are tools there to help you.
I also want to add to that answer that they mentioned that Facebook seemed like a younger application. We have a lot of demographics on these different apps and who's doing what, but one of the fastest growing demographics on Facebook is actually baby boomers. So if you find your grandmother Facebook messaging you, you know why. So I don't think there's a rhyme or a reason. And again, I think we mentioned in the first presentation, but you want to figure out where your audience is and try to meet them there and connect with them wherever that may be. I don't think there's certain rules necessarily throughout the country.
Very good. We did get some questions in. We offered the opportunity to get questions in before the webcast actually started. And I've got a couple of these here that we want to address because we felt they were good questions. Question number one. What measures of success are used in the communications world? Can you explain how and what they are actually measuring? For instance, if someone says, our video went viral, how is that measured? What does that mean? How can we show funders that the time spent on social media is worth it?
Right. Okay. I think I can take that one. There are a lot of tools out there and a lot of really great free tools that you can use to measure something and its reach on social media. So one of those tools is Google Analytics, which is free. It generates a very detailed stats about websites' traffic and traffic sources and measures conversions and sales for you. So it can even track visitors from all referrals, include search engines and social networks, which can be measured, direct visits, and referring sites. And it also displays things like advertising, pay-per-click networks, email marketing, and digital collateral, such as links within PDF documents. So that's another great free tool. And then there's something called Bitly link shortener, which you can use that will show you how many people are clicking on your link and where that traffic came from as well. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and I think we do say a lot of the time that things go viral, and there are ways to measure them out there. But I think the first thing to do is to determine how you will measure what is the ROI on your own social media and establish that goal even before you get started to determine what factors you will use to measure your campaign.
Okay, very good. This kind of combines two questions. What is the reason for hashtags in Twitter messages? And I think are hashtags used in all social media platforms or exclusive to Twitter?
You want to take that, or do you want me?
We can do it. We can double team it. I guess hashtags help people search on specific terms. And if something trends, it's easier to find information that way. One of the problems that I have is I make long hashtags. They mean nothing, but I find them funny. However, we do know that free text searching does help as well. However, on Twitter, like one of the things that I did right when I started off with Twitter was to do a search on the Medicaid program EPSDT, which is how children are covered under Medicaid. And I thought, oh, surely I am not going to find anybody tweeting about this. And sure enough, I typed in hashtag EPSTT, and I found a bunch of tweets on it. And now I sort of do that consistently. So it's a way, if you have something very specific, so it might be hashtag MCH, AmChip, for their annual conference. They always do AmChip. Last year was 13. So you can, if there's an event going on, you can actually see all of those pulled together. Another really cool way in doing a presentation, I've done this before, is there is a plugin for your PowerPoint presentation that gives people the ability to vote. And you can say, go to your smartphone, go to Twitter, and here are 3 things that I might talk about. Vote on which one you want to hear. And it actually sends it right to your presentation based on their hashtag, and you can sort of trend what people are interested in. And that's a really cool way to do it. Every social media platform has its own tags. There's the @ for showing an individual user, and one of the best ways is just to get out there and play with it. I wouldn't worry if you don't know exactly, am I doing this right or not. It's more important to get out there and get your feet wet, and then as you see more people using it, you'll sort of figure out what the hashtags should be.
That's a great answer. And I think, John, you mentioned making sure that your hashtags are not too long, because that can happen and then no one can find them or knows what they mean other than you. And some people do that for fun, but it's shorter and more simple is always the best way to go with your hashtags. Again, when you're hosting or throwing a conference or event, it's a great idea to apply that hashtag in the beginning of the conference and in all of your marketing material to include that hashtag so that people know, and they're even building momentum before your event even starts, and as soon as they get there, this is already trending. That's what the whole idea of hashtags is to get that phrase or hashtag trending so that more people are finding you.
Very good. All right. The following reads, it's great that MCHB wants programs to use social media, but for those of us housed in government agencies, the agency tends to frown on social media. Any thoughts?
Actually, yes, and this is changing.
I thought you might say that, yeah.
Again, we're realizing that the importance with any kind of health communication is that it reaches the public audience. And if you go to when you download the slides, there is a link to this new library page. It's mchlibrary.org/states/social-media.html. And it actually shows you, I think there are public health departments in every state. Some are at the state level, some are at local community levels, and we're aggregating them. And you can kind of see the breadth. I mean, it is almost pervasive. It does take time. It does take some permissions, but it is worth it. And I think if you are experiencing difficulty convincing the management of a health department, actually look in this book, The Librarian's Nitty-Gritty Guide, because they give you examples on how to convince the powers that be to engage in social media, right, and what it can, the potential good for your audiences. And I think too that will change over time. Right.
Okay, this is an interesting one. Do you have any recommendations for using social media, specifically not Facebook, as a way for direct care providers, such as home visitors working on the birth to 3 field, to network professionally? So a way for them to network professionally, i.e. share best practices, ideas for home visit content, etc. What are the pitfalls to avoid in creating something like this? Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I can give a very low-tech social media. We forget that sometimes low-tech is really good. In this case, a listserv might be the best way. The National SIDS Resource Centers, there is a very active listserv for professionals dealing with young children. In this case, it's infant mortality, but for home visitors, it might be a listserv for the home visitors. And their email exchanges, and people will send out a question, or I'm experiencing this, I'm in Minnesota, and I'm seeing a family, and I need this type of resource. Is there anyone out there who has this resource? And it is unbelievable the amount of traffic of people who are really excited and want to help, and it's just through email. This is a moderated listserv. You have to decide. You have to set a listserv up. You have to decide if it's going to be moderated or unmoderated. Are there going to be digests of it? But sometimes we forget that simple really works. And the nice thing about this is you can get it on your smartphone. So if you're out there in a home visit, you can actually post from there. You can receive right from your phone.
Right. Another thing that they may consider doing is something like a Twitter chat, where you dedicate a Twitter handle and a hashtag for a specific chat. Say it's Thursday at 2 p.m. Everyone knows what that Twitter handle is, and they send in questions and have an actual conversation. Sometimes I think we forget social media literally is a conversation. So that's another way to do just a one-time thing. Maybe it's a smaller group of people with very specific questions and feedback, but that's another great way to encourage engagement, that maybe not a bigger community where you have to monitor it and deal with so much traffic like something like Facebook.
Very high-tech.
High-tech, low-tech, right?
I've seen a couple questions like this, but basically it boils down to any recommendations on where someone can find free stock images that would be impactful, particularly for health, like observances like No Tobacco Day, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Free stock.
That's a tough thing. There are aggregators, CDC, both CDC and NIH have examples of this. And I don't have the URLs off the top of my head, but we're always faced with this. And we can provide a link in the resources section of this webinar after the fact, so you can take a look. But you can also, just start Googling. It's amazing if you Google free public health image or free images of babies, that you can find them. But there are definitely public health aggregators for these.
Is there a difference based on gender, which social media source is most popular?
We're finding things like Pinterest are more popular amongst women right now, just because they say it's very popular amongst the mommies and people like that who might be sharing best practices on motherhood and things like that. Other than that, I don't think that there's necessarily gender gaps across social media.
The only gender gap that there really remains, otherwise it's pretty standard, is in wikis.
Right.
Surprisingly, wikis, which is a form of social media we didn't get into, are male-dominated.
Right.
But other than that, we're finding that it's a nice balance.
Mm-hmm. It's a good question.
Here's a couple questions about Pinterest. First, are Pinterest files royalty-free? And then secondly, is there a way to search for topics in Pinterest?
Yeah, I can address the search topic. Pinterest does have search capability, and that has come up a lot amongst our questions just before the webcast. So as you type, suggested search terms will appear below the search bar. So, for example, if you type in bacon, you can tell it's on my mind. Search suggestions will pop up like bacon recipes or bacon oven. It will also suggest other, say, Facebook friends and pinners who you follow that have bacon in their name. So that's a way to search. And any of the boards that could have bacon in their title, for example. And then what was the other part of the question?
Are Pinterest files royalty-free?
Royalty-free. I'm not sure.
No, that we often think that just because an image is on the internet that it is fair game and we can pull it down, and lots of people do, but it's always a case-by-case basis. So if just because you see it and it looks great, it's a beautiful picture of a baby, doesn't mean that it's free for the taking. So again, it's amazing if you really find an image that you really want. Email the person who might be running the Pinterest, who has pinned it, or the source, and they might say, it costs, or they might be flattered and be willing to give it for a public health interest. But always best to ask first.
Question about HIPAA, which I think everybody in this audience probably knows what HIPAA is, but what about HIPAA and the use of social media? How do you address the concerns that organizations have of using social media and violating HIPAA? That's the insurance privacy, right?
Well, here it's no different. You know, with all of these concerns, we're not talking. There are different regulations. We're looking at the same the same intent. Here it is to protect the rights of or the privacy rights of patients. So you wouldn't post photos of patients without their permission.
Mm-hmm.
You would never do that. You would never take a picture and put it in a publication without their permission. Just the same as you would never take an Instagram and post it without their permission, or putting their full name. Again, it's relying on the same tools that you've always used. In this case, it would be consent forms for using pictures, consent forms for using people's stories. If you've done print publications or websites in the past, you might have these. Otherwise, you can look online. There are lots of really good generic ones that you can customize. But this actually brings up a really good point. In dealing with social media, it's good not to just jump into the swimming pool because you might jump in too deep.
Mm-hmm.
Start off with a social media protocol that you use. Lots of organizations are doing this and says this is what we will do. If you're going to post a photo of somebody, a patient or somebody from your community, you have to ask them for permission. You have to fill out this form. This is appropriate, this is not. Lots of organizations have these. Again, there are examples. This book has examples that you can actually download from their website and modify and print. And it's a really good way of getting you thinking about all of those aspects that seem scary at first, but you'll be okay with. But yeah, definitely think ahead and then follow through.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a lot of questions around this, and we kind of talked about it with the Pinterest about the royalty free, but what about copyrights for photos? Let's see, what about getting permissions to use people's pictures? And then the question is, if a public health agency takes a picture of an exercise class, can we post it to Instagram without getting photo releases? I guess, I don't know, we're getting into intellectual property domain.
Again, it's a question of, there's a difference between if you are putting a picture out from your own personal account and they're your friends, you're not running around with your permissions. If you are a public health department and you're using that, it probably doesn't hurt, if you're videotaping an exercise class, to have that clipboard and say, hey, here's, can we get everybody's signature here? And just, it does add a little bit to it, take some of the spontaneity out. But still, it's worth that extra effort. And then you can, in signing away these rights, often you can reuse that image for multiple uses, so it's worth the time.
One of the things that we do, we have a client in Massachusetts, and we will regularly send a photographer out, and we're trying to create our own stock library, which is another great idea of having your own stock that you can choose from and people that who've already given permission. But we'll say at the beginning of a session or a class, if anyone doesn't want to participate or be photographed, feel free to go to the back of the room. That way the photographer knows not to get you in the photo. But most people are fine with it, but it's just letting them know up front that really makes a difference.
This is an interesting kind of cart before the horse or question. Often I see Often I see smaller organizations with a low amount of users attempt to start a conversation on social media. But since they don't have a large following, no conversation ensues. Should smaller organizations keep trying to instigate conversations, or should they grow their user base first? I know conversations can help grow a user base, but questions that go unanswered, it doesn't look good for the organization.
I just had this conversation yesterday, actually, and it was with a gentleman who started his own business, and he said, hey, I have 2 people following you, you and my friend. And he was like, do I keep tweeting, or do I stop and try to grow my following? And I said to him that I think that you should attempt to keep tweeting. Obviously, if there's only 2 people following you, who cares if you mess up or you kind of are just trying trial and error to try different things? Not that many people are seeing it as if you had a bigger audience and there's more jeopardy in putting something out there and not being able to take it back. But I think it's important to get a feel for your voice on social media, get a feel for the types of content, how often you can do things like posting on Twitter, and get a feel for your rhythm and kind of your scheduling. And as you begin to create hashtags, as we spoke about earlier, to try to categorize your tweets, they will come. People will find you. So I think it's important to start small. I always tell people to start small and then start to grow your audience. But John may have a different opinion.
No, I actually agree. And one of the things we forget about social media is it's just taking our normal social interactions to the next level. And I've had that same experience. Somebody says, well, I have 2 followers. And I say, well, how many people are you following? And they say, well, nobody. And one of the first things you have to do is you have to grow your social circle electronically. In MCH, we know who our organizations are. So start to follow them. See what they're posting. The best thing is to react to other people's conversations first. Somebody will post a question, and then you answer their question, or you retweet them, or you forward their information in a newsletter. It's unbelievable how that then draws information back to you, or attention back to you. Because you can't expect everybody to be answering you if you're not fully engaged as well. It sounds daunting, but it actually isn't, as long as you incorporate it into sort of your daily activities to say, oh, we're going to send an email out about this, but we should also tweet it. And while I'm sitting there tweeting, I should look to see what other people are saying that I'm following, and either retweet it or ask them a question about it, answer that, and you'll be amazed. You actually learn a lot too from it.
You just brought up a great point, though, just in terms of if we're going to send an email out. I always encourage people to use what you have. So if you already have an e-newsletter or an email that's going to be going out, take that and maybe host it somewhere, create a link, and then create that, shrink it down into a tweet. And then also, use that and maybe create a longer message with more visuals for Facebook, and carrying that message across certain mediums. You already have the content developed, so why sit there and create additional content? It's just using that material to make it work across various platforms. It's another great way to save time, because that's another question that comes up a lot is, I don't have a lot of time, how do I do this?
Right.
I think we talked about some of these tools, but there was a question. What's the best way to develop a more visual presence if the materials your program develops do not typically include images? I think we talked about word clouds, things like that, but just kind of...
That definitely helps. Seriously, pictures of your books.
Right.
You might actually be amazed at how important it is to show pictures of your staff. Because we realize we go out to conferences and somebody will say, oh, you're actually real people. We never thought that an MCHB grantee had people who dress funny and have bad haircuts. But now that we see you, it's a really good way of engaging. So there's a lot of things that you don't have to. It doesn't have to be stunning visuals, but it has to be human and real, like this webinar.
Showing personality.
Right.
Right. Okay.
I recognize this email address. I believe this is Rami at MCHB, and he asks, how does a new organization with limited staff and resources build social media audience on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+? So small staffs, limited resources. What's the best way to go about it?
I think, well, hi, Rami, first of all. Thank you for your question. I think one of the best ways to start is by putting a plan in place. So, in our organization, we have a social media manager that does a good job. Shout outs to Jordan. And she does a great job, and also has interns who will assist her with the social media. And the biggest part of it is coming up with a plan. You know that you may not have a big staff or a lot of time commitment, but we follow a social media plan. It literally lays out every day of the week what's going to happen from Monday to Friday. If there's an event or something that's going to be happening around that, maybe we highlight or promote that event. On those weeks that we might not have a client event or something more interesting happening, then maybe we showcase more of our own original content or material. And that's one of the things that I didn't really highlight earlier was using your own content and material. People love that, and you're going to get recognized and I think a little bit more engagement, especially things like Pinterest. 20% of content on Pinterest is actually from people who are repinning, and the other 80% is original content. So you want to be part of that 80%, and you want to make sure that your content is getting shared and people are engaging with you. So if you become the resource, I think it's just, for me, I would say it's all about planning and actually finding out what social networks that your audience is on and taking advantage of those. So if they're not necessarily on Twitter or don't have access to a LinkedIn or something like that, maybe you stick with a Facebook and something else.
And I think the other thing is to schedule your time. A project that I work on that I have a very small amount of time has just gotten into social media. And right now I'm the only person on staff who's doing social media, and we started maybe 4 months ago. And I said, well, okay, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings for 15 minutes. I mean, we're talking 15 minutes. It's the first thing I do. I come in, I get my coffee, I say, I got to come up with something to social media. And I spend at least 5 minutes of that time looking to see what other people are doing and posting. I search topics. In this case, it's an HIV/AIDS project. So I look, I say, oh my gosh, I never knew about this group. So I follow them. So that's 5 minutes of my time. And then I spend 5 minutes like retweeting or finding something else that somebody else has done, asking questions, being social. And then the last 5 minutes I say, okay, what are we going to say today?
Right.
And it's amazing. In 15 minutes, 3 times a week, we've gained a following in 1 quarter that back in the day when I didn't have a plan, I didn't have a schedule, took a year to sort of grow. So if you have a plan, like Tamika says, and you have a schedule, you're good to go.
Good to go.
This is about predicting the future.
This question.
What role do you see video subscriptions playing with these new technologies? YouTube is very user-friendly, but there has been some discussion about it no longer being offered as a free service for certain types of content. I'd appreciate your thoughts about this. Do you think should we be worried about these things being, you have to start paying for them, or?
I love these questions about the future because it's like predict the future, and I never know the right answer. But all I can tell people is if you're on something like a YouTube and it's working for you, stay on it. There may be, I think that the platform will dictate it. I don't know if you remember all the changes that were happening with Facebook. It was going to be you had to have paid in order to get your post promoted, and what they found was that the users were speaking on their own behalf and saying, no, we won't have it, we don't want that, and they did away with the changes. And I think we see that iteration happening over and over, what people are prepared to do. And I'm sure that same type of thing would happen with YouTube, where maybe, say, advertising takes over that role and they reach out to a different audience because they know that they're not going to be able to put that fee onto the users. I mean, I don't know, but that's a great question.
No, you're right. The social component of the user is
Right.
important. If lots of people are on there, and that's why it's important for public health groups to be involved, because then we realize, these are tools, not just for showing kittens and puppies, but it has a strong social component. That will help dictate.
Right. I think so. Good question.
I believe we answered this question, but just again, what platforms do the 65-plus age group use? I think you mentioned that baby boomers were the
Facebook.
largest growing
Right.
group in Facebook.
And LinkedIn is another one. We didn't talk about it because it's not so visual, but that's another one. We have a lot of clients who are, say, engineers or attorneys, and they like to think of it as, a social Rolodex, and it works for them, and they use it to get new business and for lead generation and things like that. So that's another one. In terms of socials, can you think of any others?
If we're talking, this is sort of begs the question of life course. Seriously, Facebook is, I think, the largest growing group on Facebook is 55 plus.
Plus, yeah.
And I actually met with some people recently who said, we can't imagine that somebody 55 and older is going to use Facebook. And I said, well, do they have children? And they said yes. And I said, do their children have children? And they said yes. And I said, if there are pictures of grandbabies, you are going to get the 55 plus going there. Right. So it makes sense. And once I said it that way, they said, oh yeah, if they're going there for social reasons, seeing their grandkids, they're going to go there to see other information. And the important thing to know about things like, Facebook in particular, I have the stats. I think the average Facebook user follows 54, 55 groups, many of which are public health groups. If you're a person 55 plus and you have been newly diagnosed with Parkinson's, you're going to seek out other people. And it's amazing. You do a search for pages on Parkinson's, and there are dozens of them, one for every state. They're everywhere. And that just becomes part of your feed. As you're looking at the pictures of your new grandbaby, you get information about the newest research.
Right.
So public health is insidious.
I also know, and this is kind of a little bit off topic, but we're talking about video, things like Skype. I've seen a lot of the older generation, because you mentioned grandkids and things like that, using the video networking because it's easier to stay in touch with their family that way. Right.
This I just found interesting. Valerie wants to make sure that we give props to the Florida Department of Health. Apparently, the Fifth Guy
yes, I
video campaign that you mentioned won an Emmy.
Oh, wow.
An Emmy for the Florida Department of Health.
Yeah. Valerie, it is amazing. I hope everybody takes a look at that video. It makes me smile, and then I realize, oh my gosh, I'm learning something. That's the best way to learn.
John, you alluded to this about kind of the priority of the platforms changing, that you were thinking first, web and now mobile device, and that's the question. Do you see all these moving towards smartphone platforms? Should more efforts be made towards smartphone applications for these?
We definitely are finding that. We're learning that, especially for core audiences in MCH, they might not have a great computer at home. They might not have time to go to a public library to access information online through a traditional website, but they very well might have a really good smartphone that they use to stay in touch. We're finding that the youth has these. What we're finding now is that there have been programs out there to push public health information. We're starting to see evaluations come back on how effective are they. The Journal of the American Medical Association in November did a study on New York City. They did an influenza health app on their smartphone. And the numbers were small, and it's preliminary, but it was one of the first of it. It's kind of looked at effectiveness of public health campaigns on the mobile device. And they actually did find that it did affect public health change. Also, Text for Baby, they are actually being funded from another group to do a larger scale evaluation of the Text for Baby campaign. And this is very specific to our MCH audiences. So when that comes out, I think we're going to be really pleased with the results.
Okay. So the question, this question basically boils down to, do you feel that someone should become very tech savvy with Facebook and Twitter first before moving on to these other and implementing these other platforms?
I can answer that. I teach a lot of different, courses on how to use social media and just getting started with the technology itself. And I think that Facebook, I like to call it like a digital scrapbook. It's easy. The layout is developed as if it's a newspaper format. That's what they're going for. And it's big photos. There's, categories, photos, albums, videos. You can see events, what users are doing. So it's easy. And I think that's why people like being on Facebook. It's a simple way to start. And basically your friends and your colleagues can all just find you. I think Twitter is more overwhelming for people. They seem to not be able to see that conversation happening with Twitter. So I think that is a good place to start, but just realizing that you have to kind of work a little bit harder to build that following so that you can have more engagement and people talking back to you to have that two-way dialogue. I think with Facebook, it's much easier to see. All your friends are on, all your friends find you. And in Twitter, you have to go seek out that conversation a little bit more. And you mentioned, hashtags and we talked about things like Twitter chats once you get savvy, but just having that, just at least having a presence on it and starting small and building. But I think it can't hurt to test the waters when it comes to social media platforms. There's no wrong way to do anything. Obviously, once you put something out there, you can't necessarily take it back. But I think you may want to see what you're comfortable with, what your core audience is using, what works best for your program, and where you're seeing the most interest. A lot of people on Facebook say, I have so many followers, and I'll see our clients say that to us. But who are they? Are they helping you? with lead generation? Are they actually purchasing your products and services, or is it more impactful to have more leads over here on LinkedIn and maybe more people who you can start a dialogue with on Twitter, who you may end up having that handshake, look me in the eye conversation with? So I think it's important to find where people are, but definitely get to know. We mentioned a lot of them here: Instagram, Pinterest, Pictochart. Try them all out and see how you like them and what you're comfortable with.
You just mentioned lead generating, and which segues nicely to this question. Can you define, quote, lead generation embedding?
Do you want to take that one?
Well, I'll let you take that one.
Okay. Right. So lead generation
That's more
embedding.
commercial than me.
I mentioned things like Bitly links or lead generation. So you can actually set up your website where you have links within it. And if you're sending people to a certain site, like we mentioned, with the Google Analytics, we can set it up so that there certain services and search terms are already embedded, and then they're kind of submitted to that landing page, and that's where people are going to find you. So you're actually tracking the lead, if that makes sense. You're embedding a tracking code, and when someone lands on that page or when they're brought there, you can tell that the lead was brought in from a certain campaign or, say, a microsite because of that URL that you use. So that's kind of what embedding the link does, and it helps you keep track of it so you can see where you're bringing people in from and how they're finding you.
And actually, tagging off of that, one thing that we forget is information isn't always one size fits all.
Right.
So if you're reaching out and you're putting a link out there for a specific audience, send them back to a specific page. So if you're trying to reach home visitors,
right,
don't just send them. Don't always send people to the homepage of your website. If it takes a little bit of extra time, make that landing page for home visitors to say, "Hey, welcome.
Right.
We saw that you came to us through Twitter or through a conference, and here's information just for you."
Right.
And you'll be amazed when you go back and look at the analytics that people actually like that and they use that.
I'm not sure if this is hypothetical, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. Is there such thing as social media overload? And I would think that you two would say, no way.
Well, yes, there is. Yeah, I think there is. I mean, I think you definitely, it's funny, we just did one of the resources that you can download. I think that we've put it up here. If not, it's on our website, is Are You Addicted to Social Media? And I think it can be, but you have to put limits on what you do. So if you set an alarm, that's one way to limit your time on social media. You may want to do something in terms of having a goal, and like John said, having 15 minutes, and then when you reach it, it's over. Getting off the computer, maybe getting up, deciding to take a walk for a while, to go see someone in person. And there's a good rule of thumb: if you wouldn't pick up the phone and have a conversation with the person that you're following on Facebook or on social networks, then think twice before adding them to your social network. So I think that in terms of overload, we're the people who have to keep track of our own time, but you just don't want to get carried away with it. And I think the best way in doing that, again, is to have a plan in place so that when the time is up, the time is up.
And I guess the other thing to remember is social media, whereas is different than other forms of communication where you have a website, it's there all the time.
Right.
Social media is sort of in the moment. This is what's happening now. Come, we're going to be at this conference now. Come see us at this booth. As an end user, there might be any moment where you're overwhelmed and you can't deal with it, and you're like, okay, I'm not looking today. Well, tomorrow there'll be other information. And that's why sometimes it's okay to repost things. Like we reposted the information about this webinar several times. And people caught it someday, they didn't catch it the other day. The other thing too is, from a public health perspective, let's take the other aspect, or the other view. And I know one thing that MCHB is very interested in is looking at what they are calling predictive analysis of what's going on in the country. And this has happened with cases of influenza. Getting information about how flu is migrating takes a long time, but you go on to Twitter and you can see everybody's like, oh my God, I'm down with the flu today. And that's a much faster way of seeing what the needs of our audiences are out there. So looking at it from the gathering information, it is immediate and it can be overwhelming, but you can pick out information like, let's say, do a search just on breastfeeding today on Twitter, #breastfeeding. I'm curious to see what we might find out. So sometimes too much information is good if you can filter it.
Right.
Well, I think that actually served as a nice kind of wrap-up. We're running out of time here. Any last-minute quick, 10 seconds, 15 seconds of kind of summary that you want to give, or do you think we've...
So much pressure. Okay. I will say that just recognize that social media is not going away. These visual social media tools that we laid out are only growing, and you've seen the numbers coming up. So I would encourage you to get started. I know it may seem overwhelming, but just start small and grow it. And I think you get out of it what you put into it. So keep that in mind. Just think high quality content all the time with visuals.
Right. And yes, you brought it round home. Visuals, yes, are really important. We're only beginning to realize how important it is to engage people. But the overall take-home message should be for public health and for MCH in particular, where we're addressing the needs of families and mothers and children. We know people are using these platforms, so it's a really good way for us as the MCH workforce to reach out directly to them, to start a conversation. Not, we used to talk about public health campaigns. Well, now it's public health conversations. And social media is really a good way, especially in times of uncertain budgets. It's cost effective, and we know it has direct outreach. So it's definitely something that is worth the effort, even though it's a little scary at times. But there are lots of people out there. Tamika is here. Windrose Communication is here to help. The MCH Library is here. So there's a lot going on in the field.
Excellent. Well, I certainly want to thank John and Tamika, our experts, for sharing so much valuable information today. We're sorry we could not get to everybody's questions. We had about 70 questions. But we will attempt to follow up by email for anybody that didn't get addressed. Also note that this will be archived at the learning.mchb.hrsa.gov site in about 2 weeks, probably even sooner than that. And you will get an announcement if you registered for the program. If you're hearing my voice, you will get an email notifying you of that availability of that archive. Also, if you want to review some more social media basics, I would direct you to the same site, the learning.gov site, and you will find our presentation from May 16th, 2012. You can scroll down by date. Connecting with your target audience using social media. That's more of a social media 101. Finally, please take a moment to take our survey. And for Tamika and John and the rest of us, thank you and good afternoon.